Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Fronteras, Changing America. I'm Carlos Correa. On the program, Cristina Parker. She's with the Border Network for Human Rights. We'll talk to her about immigration, about the organization, and the role Latinos play in the upcoming presidential election. Joining me now is Cristina Parker. Cristina, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
And Cristina, you're part of the leading immigration reform and human rights advocacy organization in the United States. The group is based in El Paso. Tell me how you got involved in the group.
Sure. Well, a passion for doing what's right in this country, which is doing right by immigrants. We're a country of immigrants, and it's really important that we treat immigrants right and have a sensible immigration policy, which unfortunately we don't have right now, I think, as we all know.
Tell me who makes up the members of this organization?
Sure. So the members of our organization are border residents. They range from Las Cruces, New Mexico to San Elizario, Texas. So that's a very wide region. We've got about 4,000 members who are involved. It's based on family membership. So people join as a family, and they form a human rights committee where they're responsible for learning and teaching others about human and constitutional rights. So for instance, in this part of the country, obviously a big issue is local law enforcement doing the work of immigration agents, acting as an immigration agent. So we teach people why that's wrong, what the Constitution has to say about that, and how they can protect themselves from being a victim of that kind of abuse.
Now, immigration is a hot topic. Why do you think that a lot of people focus a lot on this subject?
Sure. It's an emotional issue, you know, but unfortunately a lot of people will confuse their feelings for facts on the subject of immigration. I mean, take just the words we use, illegal immigrant. On its face, that's a word that doesn't mean anything. It's nonsensical. It implies that there's even a criminal code that applies to immigration, which there is not. You know, really, when somebody violates the immigration code, they're violating an administrative procedure of a federal agency. So there's nothing illegal or legal about it. And that inflames people. That makes them feel like you've done something wrong, and what do we owe you or something. And people get very emotional about that, but unfortunately they're misinformed a lot of the time.
Why do you think a lot of people, I guess when you mention emotions, they get angry or they get, in some cases, frightened when they hear the word immigration? Is it because they're not well informed or educated about the topic?
I think that sometimes, but we also have to look at our leaders in this country, our political leaders who raise the specter of terrorism to enact what they see as you know, the proper immigration policies, which are harsh enforcement and walls and militarization of the border and things like that. They wrap it all in national security, and we need to be protected from elements who would harm this country. But that just doesn't stand up to the facts. So that's someone's feelings, right? But that doesn't stand up to the facts about who's really coming to this country. People who want to work, you know, people who are looking for a better life and for whom there is no line to get into legally right now. And so they come without papers, and you would too, you know, anyone would.
Let's talk about the other side of immigration, the side that a lot of people probably are not familiar with, and that's, you kind of touched on it, is perhaps the 2-year-old who came with mom and dad from another country, who was raised here, went to college here, worked here. Are people not aware of that side of the immigration, the face of immigration?
Sure, the young people, right, the dreamers, as we often call them. I think thankfully they've done such a good job of putting their stories out there. What they often say is that they're coming out of the shadows, and they're not going to be afraid to declare themselves undocumented. And I think that they've done a really great job of putting themselves out there, and we need more of that. You know, I commend them for that so much, because you know, I mean, a lot of people out there probably know someone who's undocumented, but may not know it because that person doesn't say, "Oh, hey, nice to meet you. I don't have immigration papers," you know. But when people start seeing that these are their friends, their families, you know, I mean, usually people know about their family, but their coworkers, their kids' teacher, something like that, and they realize that these people are already part of our community. There is nothing to fear from people who want to come to this country and work hard, which is the vast majority of people who are coming.
How does your organization help with these young people to let them share their story with the community?
Sure. Well, so most recently, obviously, we had the deferred action announcement from Obama that has caused, just so much action and so much work to be done for young people who want to apply for this. So one of the things that we've done is put on forums for people to come and ask these questions, talk to certified and trusted attorneys who can tell them about what they need to do to apply when that time comes. It hasn't come yet. So I do want to warn people not to jump out and if anyone says they can pay, that you can pay them for an application, we want people to know that that's not true yet. But we saw so many people coming out to those forums, people who may not have come out initially. So it's like this, the president extended a hand, said, hey, we can help you get on the right track. And so many people came out and said, okay, I want that, people who may not have been involved before. So we actually hosted 5 of those forums here in the region, 2 in New Mexico and 3 in West Texas, and all of them exceeded our expectations for turnout.
Now, there are a lot of people who come out in support and who want to take part. Are there people who want to but are afraid, that don't want to do that?
Sure, there's a lot of fear, and that's something that we really see a lot in our community is, we'll hear our organizers talk about how they'll invite someone to come to a human rights committee where they can talk about these issues, learn about the Constitution, and people think, well, why? Who are you guys? Why are you trying to gather all these people together? There's just so much fear in the immigrant community. Of course, luckily, once people come to our committees, they realize that what we're doing is educating the community. But there's so much fear in the immigrant community that permeates every part of their life. An invitation to come to a human rights committee can even be seen as like, why would I do that? Why should I put my neck out there? Mm-hmm. And that's wrong. We shouldn't have people who are living and working and doing business in this country live in fear. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, that's the truth of the immigrant community right now.
Now, as a reporter, I was able to attend some of your events and rallies. Tell me a little bit about how your organization, how these events benefit your message, what you're trying to get out there.
Sure. So one of the most important things that we believe in and that our members believe in is political participation. So, a lot of times people think that that's just voting. And we certainly believe that voting is important. We register people to vote. We encourage our members to go out and vote. But the reality is that if you're undocumented, you can't vote. So, for instance, you would never hear our organization say something like, if you don't vote, you don't have a voice, because we don't believe that. So when people come out to marches and they come out to rallies and they take trips to the legislature, whether that be in New Mexico or Texas, where we work, they're participating in the political process regardless of their immigration status. And we see that as somebody's right, but also their duty. So when people come out and we had 1,000 people rally to keep driver's licenses in New Mexico here in Las Cruces last year. Mm-hmm. Those are people who are stepping up and they're being empowered to tell their story about, number one, why driver's license matter to their family, and 2, to combat some of the political rhetoric out there. Again, Governor Susana Martinez was very good about raising the specter of terrorism in the driver's license issue, which is just, mm-hmm. Shameful at worst and silly at best. But
what was your feelings among the leadership of your organization about that?
About the driver's license
mm-hmm.
issue in New Mexico? Well, we take our cue from our members, and our members said they use their driver's licenses, they need them. It gives them a sense of security and a sense of belonging. And a sense of being integrated into the community, which is what every immigrant wants. Mm-hmm. And so our members said the driver's licenses are important to us. So the leadership said, okay, well, we're going to take this issue on and we're going to fight for it, because it's the driver's license thing is so crucial. Imagine if you didn't have a driver's license. How you'd be afraid to, every single time you drove your kids to school, to be afraid to go to the store. And just feel like you were in a vulnerable situation. So, that's an issue that's very dear to our hearts.
How much of an impact do you guys think you made on that certain topic?
Well, I'd like to think that we made a big impact on that. All we can say is that Susana Martinez has tried 3 times mm-hmm. to repeal and take away the driver's licenses from families and workers, and she's failed. And I know that in Santa Fe, our members were the biggest constituency there saying, this matters to us, right? There were plenty of people there from the Tea Party and lobbyists and stuff saying what they think driver's licenses mean to the state, but there were people there who were actually saying, hey, 7 years ago I was able to get a driver's license and this is what it meant to my family. And that's so important, to have the communities that are actually impacted by these kinds of policies talking to their lawmakers.
And the voice is important, especially in your organization. Who attends these border events? Besides the members, besides the families and the children who may be impacted by, say, immigration,
right.
Are lawmakers involved?
Sure, we often invite lawmakers to be part of our events. We have a lot of great allies, both Democrats and Republicans. In fact, just this weekend we had Dee Margo, Republican representative in El Paso, attend one of our events and give a talk to some people. We always invite law enforcement. Mm-hmm. We have a great working relationship in El Paso with the sheriff and police chief there. So we ask them to bring their voices. Of course, religious leaders, business owners. We really believe very strongly in working with every sector of society. However, usually at our membership, it's these families who are really impacted, and we believe that their voice has to come first and foremost.
Is there a big fear among your members and law enforcement?
You know, that's a good question, and I think the line for that is maybe drawn by local and federal. People certainly fear the Border Patrol and customs at the bridges, especially because the abuses of customs agents at the bridges are against people who are trying to legally come into the country, whether going back and forth between Mexico or they have a tourist visa or something like that. Those people have fear of custom agents, and that's wrong. However, I would say that locally, at least in El Paso, there's a very good relationship. There's a lot of understanding that what we have there is not the Arizona model, right? And that permeates. Little by little, people start to realize that, and they trust the police and they work with the police, and that's what we believe in. That's what we believe we need for a strong community and community security. Mm-hmm. However, I should mention that a big part of our work is to document human rights abuses that happen in our community. In fact, this past May, we released a report, and unfortunately we found that here in southern New Mexico, in the Doñana County, we have a little Arizona, it seems. We had a lot of complaints from people saying that local police and sheriffs were doing immigration work, stopping people and asking them for their papers and things of that nature. And so that's something that we want to try to educate both our community, but also those lawmakers and decision makers in the county about the problems that we see there.
Gotcha. Now, it seems like every election, the topic of immigration comes up. Mm-hmm. Why do you think this immigration plays a big role in campaigns?
Well, Latinos are growing, right, every day. It's disappointing, though, because we do not vote in the numbers that we are.
Why do you think that happens?
I don't know. I think something needs to change culturally. Mm-hmm. Maybe this idea that, you really need to vote, that this is important, and we certainly believe that. I don't know what the answer to that question is, but there's plenty of people out there working on getting the Latino vote to come up as it should. But on the topic of immigration in the elections, it's just, I think, like I said before, it's so emotional. People on both sides get very riled up. I can say that on our side, people get very riled up because you're talking about people's families. Mm-hmm. And what we have a lot of times are people who live in mixed status families. Someone's a citizen, someone's not, someone's a green card holder, someone's something else, and forget how many types of visas there are, over 200 or something. So you're talking very directly about someone's abuelita, someone's mom, someone's dad. It gets very heated. But on the other side, I think it serves the political will of a lot of people to rile up some people against immigrants. It's very easy to pick on immigrants and say that they're taking your jobs, even if the facts say they're not, mm-hmm. that they're bringing disease, even though the facts say they're not, that they're terrorists, even though we all know that they're not. But that plays very well with some people, and we saw that in the GOP primary. Mm-hmm. It was like a contest of who could be most against immigrants. Mm-hmm. We had Herman Cain talking about electrocuting migrants at the border. We had a lot of that, and Mitt Romney, of course, saying that he supports the Arizona model mm-hmm. for the whole country, which is just shameful.
Are politicians handling the topic responsibly?
No, not at all. Not at all. Unfortunately, on the subject of immigration, we have nowhere to turn, mm-hmm. really. We have a president who's deported more people than any president in history, with a higher annual average, the last 4 presidents combined. He's been harshest on immigration enforcement. I believe he's come up to just about 2 million now is his record. And of course that's been done through the program called Secure Communities, which is basically a federal Arizona SB 1070. It gets local law enforcement asking for people's papers. And then on the other side you have Republicans, like I said, Mitt Romney saying we should all be Arizona, or people arguing about who's going to electrocute the most migrants at the border. There is no place to turn on the subject of immigration, and they don't talk about it responsibly at all.
Where do you think we are with immigration, and where do you see it in 10 years?
Well, I hope we would have a reform in 10 years, sensible reform that absolutely includes a way for the people who are living and working here now to have a path to citizenship. That's absolutely necessary. The humanitarian and financial burdens of deporting 12 million people out of this country are too high. Absolutely too high a price to pay. So we need a way for those people to come out of the shadows, be able to earn their citizenship. And so I hope that that's where we would be in 10 years.
Do you think that a lot of Latinos know how important their role is in electing officials?
I don't know. I think maybe that's why we don't have many more Latinos voting. Maybe they don't realize that, there's so many of us and we need to speak out. Well, but at the same time, you certainly see both candidates fighting real hard for the Latino vote. So at the same time, maybe they do see how hard they're fighting for us.
What about Latinos in political roles? Are we seeing not so many of them, or should we see more?
Well, the one Latino that I already mentioned, Latina, Susana Martinez, is not right on the subject of immigration, supporting self-deportation measures like taking away people's licenses here. We see Marco Rubio pushing a DREAM Act Light, which, well, it hasn't been filed, so we'll wait to see what that really means. But at the same time, we have leaders like Luis Gutierrez, who's at the front of the immigration issue all the time. But I don't see many others out there. I don't know.
What was your reaction, you or many of your members, when you heard about, for example, our governor and the driver's license issue? What was your initial reaction?
Well, we first, at least in this last session cycle, we first became aware of it when members started calling us and saying, I got this letter saying I have to go to, I think it was Albuquerque, to verify that I'm, rightfully holding a license. And that just seemed so predatory. So, the idea of rounding up immigrants is just so un-American. And so that was when we first started to see, okay, this is really impacting our members. First of all, you have to cross a border patrol checkpoint to get to Albuquerque from where we are in Las Cruces and Anthony. So it seemed almost like a trap set by the governor. I don't know if it was intended to be like that, but she certainly overlooked that. But we also saw that those were being sent to immigrants of all stripes, not just undocumented immigrants, but legal permanent residents. Of course, they brought a lawsuit. A legal permanent resident brought a lawsuit based on that, but also naturalized citizens. So it seemed as if they took the database of all immigrants and said, let's round them up and check their licenses, which again is just so un-American, so obscene.
When you see someone who's of Hispanic heritage doing that in her power, what reaction do you guys have?
Well, I mean, she's a politician and she wants to win. And she's a Republican, and that's what works for the Republican base, is to scapegoat the immigrants, say that they're responsible for any and all problems, pick one, it's the immigrants' fault. And that works with the Republican base. So I think it's beyond ethnicity with that. It's about what politicians do, and they're all like that, really.
When it comes to communication within your organization, you obviously do mouth-to-mouth communication, but a majority of it, would you say, happens online?
Not a majority, but we do a lot of online communication. I mean, the majority of our communication within our members, within our organization, happens in those committee meetings where people meet with their families or at their churches, and that's where really all the information is being transmitted. But what we do try to do is take a reflection of that, and we do share that on Facebook, online, on YouTube, all of those. We have a Pinterest, which is the newest one, and we try to share inspirational historical things about human rights throughout U.S. history.
How much of an impact do you think that social media plays within your organization and the message you're trying to display?
Well, there's a generation gap, for sure. The older of our members, I don't think, could care less that we have a Facebook, But our younger membership base are always on their phones and saying, yes, I'm coming to this event, I'm coming to this march, this rally. So with the younger people, I think it has a big impact. I mean, they're already on Facebook. And so if we can just extend that presence to being active in politics and sharing that with their friends, that's just awesome. And they usually do.
Is your membership growing in terms of young people getting more active in what's happening?
Oh yeah, definitely. We really run the gamut in our organization between young people and older folks. But we definitely see young people taking a lead in our organization all the time.
Now, recently you had a conference. Tell us a little bit about the conference, what it was about, and where did it take place?
Sure. So this last weekend, we had what we called the We the Border Narrative Conference. It happened in El Paso, and it was made up of people from all along the border, what we call border stakeholders sometimes. Border Patrol was invited to participate along with Department of Homeland Security, but they were also sitting down with local law enforcement, like the El Paso County Sheriff's Office, faith leaders of all kinds from Arizona to Texas, local elected officials. We had a county judge from Presidio County there representing his county, communities from New Mexico and West Texas, obviously, in our membership. And the conference was really about starting from the premise that we all agree that there are lies about the border out there. The classic example is the governor next door, Rick Perry, talking about how a car bomb went off in El Paso. And he made that comment last year and it just spread like wildfire. Totally untrue. But does that matter? No, because it's an exciting, sexy story about violence on the border. And it's totally untrue. And that impacts us so much when that story is out there that the border is violent and chaotic and wide open, when the truth is that it's highly militarized. You know, the border is sealed shut almost. That we've got people dying in the desert because they're trying to cross. When we have all of these things that are the truth versus the reality, it hurts us all. So we had people talking about how it hurts their business, how it hurts their faith community, how it hurts communities and elected officials who are trying to get things done, and as well as how it complicates the work of local law enforcement. So we came together on that premise that there's an untruth out there and a truth that needs to be told about the border. And it was really exciting. We were just trying to get at that truth from the faith perspective, from the business perspective, from all of those perspectives, and talk about what really is the truth of our border and how are we going to share that truth with people so that car bombs going off in El Paso is not the story that's out there.
And how important is your conference, hosting your conference in the area?
Very important. I mean, we're the ones on the border. What we see so often is when people talk about the border and immigration policy, they don't live here. You know, it's not the people who live here and are impacted. Like if you look at the wall, it's such a good example, the border wall. Border communities were united against that across sectors. Local law enforcement was against it, business people were against it, environmentalists were against it, communities, business people. There was just such a wide consensus on the border that the border wall was a bad idea. And yet the debate nationally was how good of an idea is this, you know, with almost no voice from the border saying this doesn't work for our communities. So we see when people are making decisions away from the border, there's something wrong with that.
How well is your conferences attended?
We had about 80 people there, which was actually more than we expected. We wanted it to be small and kind of intimate, like a dialogue. Right. But we had a great representation from all along the border.
Is this something that you guys plan to do every year, and will there be chances of the conference coming to the New Mexico side? Sure.
This was our first of this kind of conference, and I think right now the organizing committee is just looking at where to take this conversation, but we definitely do want to open it up more and get as many voices in there as we can.
And then a place where people can find information, as we mentioned, is the internet. Sure. And all of you have, your organization has a website. Can you talk a little bit about what people can find on there and the address to it?
Sure. So they can find us online at www.bnhr.org, standing for Border Network for Human Rights. And on there we have a lot of usually information about upcoming events, right? If we have a petition drive going on, they can sign the petition digitally there. But also there's ways for them to get involved if they want to become one of these human rights promoters and be part of a committee. You know, they can call the office and learn how they can be trained in that. We have videos of our events. There's a lot of stuff people can find there.
So does it help spread your message and the topic of immigration to folks out there?
Sure, yeah, like I said before, we believe that the border voice and the voice of the people who live on the border needs to be at the forefront of the immigration debate, because so often people are making decisions for us, and we see that as wrong.
Mm-hmm. If there's someone watching out there and wants to take part in your event or be part of the organization, what do they need to do?
Well, they can find all of that on our website at any time. Anytime we have something coming up, it's on our website. So if they live in southern New Mexico or West Texas, they can find a way to get involved there. And also the phone number to our 2 offices in New Mexico and Texas are on there.
Okay. And then do you find that, well, a lot of the information is in English and Spanish, correct? Mm-hmm. Do you find that a lot of people in the community are worried that they won't be able to understand what all of you are talking about?
No, actually I think most of our meetings are done in Spanish, and most of our stuff is done in Spanish, but it's bilingual more than anything. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, we live in a bilingual place, and so we kind of do it in both languages when we need to. Sounds
good. Is there anything else you want to say, or?
Well, we do have an upcoming celebration. Mm-hmm. On August 18th, we're opening a 3rd office in Far East El Paso in the Montana Vista region. And they can go to our website if they want to find out how to be involved in that celebration.
All right. Cristina Parker with the Border Network for Human Rights, thanks so much for being part of the program.
Thank you for having me.
And that's all the time we have. You can watch this entire interview online at krwg.org. While you're there, you can visit our blog or follow us on Twitter or like us on Facebook. I'm Carlos Correa. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.